Today's video is on a very controversial topic, adrenal fatigue. Adrenal fatigue, we're going to discuss in this video of how it works in the body. Adrenal fatigue is a very real thing that's being claimed by the medical community and much of the scientific community as something that doesn't exist. But it's being studied as if it's adrenal insufficiency, and it is not. Most research done to prove the existence of adrenal fatigue has been done looking for low cortisol environments. But adrenal fatigue can happen with an imbalanced cortisol. It does not have to be low. It can be high or low, and I'm going to break that down in this video. First, let's understand what adrenal fatigue is. For those of you that may have had a long day and feel tired, had a hard week and felt tired for a couple days, this is not adrenal fatigue. That's just fatigue. But for those that have had ongoing fatigue for 30, 60, 90 days, 6 months, that's accompanied with lethargy. Lethargy feels like in your mind you want to move, but your body just doesn't want to move. You'll also feel muscle weakness. Your skin may look very pale. You may have some abdominal pain, low blood pressure, maybe some hypoglycemia that goes with it. You'll have salt or sugar cravings. You could have some depression or irritability. These people get very hangry a lot of times. You'll have thinking, maybe some brain fog, confusion, inability to focus. These things will go on for long periods of time. And these symptoms do mimic and have overlap with what's called adrenal insufficiency. Adrenal insufficiency, again, is when you have too low of cortisol, and that's an actual medical condition that they use to treat with cortisone. And this is where the argument begins. But again, I want to stay on the topic of adrenal fatigue itself. So adrenal fatigue happens not just because of too low cortisol. Much of the research that's been done looking for adrenal fatigue shows that they can have the same symptoms with too high or too low of cortisol. And that's because it doesn't have to do with either high or low. It has to do with an imbalanced circadian rhythm. Circadian rhythm is the release of stress hormone or cortisol, which you need to move and go about your day, at a certain amount throughout the day. Your body is on a clock, a timer, and it's reading you, it's measuring your day-to-day lifestyle, and it's dictating when it's going to secrete cortisol for your day and then when it's going to reduce it for your day. So for those individuals that are really manipulating their body, whether it be through dietary means, lifestyle means, can really throw off your circadian rhythm. And if it gets off enough, significantly enough, it can create fatigue. So a normal production of cortisol. So we're looking at a chart here, a graph. This is going to be cortisol volume over time, from 6 to 10. All right. A normal circadian rhythm for the standard human would look like this. Okay, that's a rough estimate of what it would look like normally. Well, there are things that can throw off this natural secretion of cortisol. Things like staying in caloric deficit way too long. Maybe a serious trauma, a car accident, a divorce, something that could be prolonged, that lasts a long time. Overtraining for long periods of time. For the love of God, people. Fitness is the only industry that I have ever met that trains its people like professional athletes, but does not take professional off seasons, professional downtime, professional rest, professional feeding the work. Professional athletes understand that they have limits. If they want to perform at their best, they have to have off rests and feeds in order to do that. In the fitness industry, we just want more of your money, so we keep telling you more training, more memberships, more. And that creates fatigue over time, overtraining. Low fat, low carb. Your calories could be up, but if you're a paleo dieter, or if you're a really, really high protein keto type individual, not male, men can tend to get away with that sometimes, but carbs and fats nourish the adrenal glands. A lot of the micronutrients and phytonutrients that exist in those foods help support adrenal function. Staying up way too late. You night owls, people that stay up watching Netflix for 3 seasons, then try to get up and have a full day, and then keep changing their rhythm. Night shift workers or people who have swing shift really have a hard time here. Staying up late, not going to bed at the same time. Infection or illness. Your body runs on cortisol. Your immune system does. That's why when you get sick, you have to produce more white blood cells to attack the foreign invaders. Your body steals cortisol to do that, so that's why when you're sick, you're tired. So if you've got a continuous infection, maybe you've got bacterial infection, maybe you've got chronic viral infections, maybe you get chronic infections of another nature, it's going to steal your cortisol all the time and make you fatigued. Vitamin deficiency. This is a very big one. People don't realize it. But people that are chronic tanners have to stay very tan all the time. By tanning, you burn up a lot of your vitamin C. You burn up vitamin C in a lot of different things you do. Vitamin C and a lot of other vitamins and phytonutrients and micronutrients help support function. So if you're someone who's a strict dieter and only eats this wide a variety of foods and don't eat the plethora of the Mediterranean diet, you're getting deficient. You're narrowing your food selection, so you're narrowing the vitamins and nutrients that you normally get on a day, and that leads to deficiency, and that can create fatigue. Those of you who abuse stimulants for way too long or take way too much coffee, when you induce the production of cortisol all the time, your body's going to read that, and it's not going to like that. It wants homeostasis. It wants balance, which is the one thing you're not giving it in your life. Therefore, it's going to counteract you like a chess match. So when you keep trying to push higher and higher cortisol levels, it's going to secrete less and less cortisol and try to drop it. So if you take stimulants for a long time and then just stop them, now you're not artificially producing cortisol where your body is adapted to not making it at that time, and it's going to crash cortisol. So these things in any various amounts for prolonged periods of time, over a season of time, over 3 months, can create adrenal fatigue. All right? So what happens is this normal level, what will start to happen is your cortisol in the morning will begin to drop. This dropping of cortisol usually leads to not adrenal insufficiency, which is the medical terminology, where you're not producing any. It actually starts to suppress in the morning and rise at night. So that's why researchers a lot of time who are looking for one variable of too low cortisol can't find it, because it's not necessarily one blood volume. When researchers are looking at cortisol, they take a blood panel. Well, blood only looks at cortisol at one time during the day. Cortisol production is a dynamic process that happens over 24 hours. The best way to look at this is through spit and urine tests, which is what our dietetics department does at Nutrition Dynamic. So we can look at the full rhythm throughout the day. So it's very easy to identify adrenal fatigue if you're using the right means to find it. So what ends up happening now is that cortisol doesn't look like this anymore. It looks like this. So you're producing too much cortisol when you're going to sleep, so you're not getting restful sleep. Then when you wake up in the morning, you feel tired because you're not producing any. Now, this is a very dummied down version of how this works. It can make radical twists and turns. That's usually what happens first. An imbalanced circadian rhythm. That is adrenal fatigue. Okay? So what also happens though is over time, now that you're making it imbalanced and you're probably upping your stimulants and trying to keep yourself awake, this will start to drop too over time. Dynamically, over time, your body will adapt through stages of adrenal fatigue. The first stage of adrenal fatigue is overproduction. So you overproduce cortisol due to any one of these things, then it gets insufficient. Your body starts to adjust to that, and it drops. It can't keep up with the load it needs to produce. But then over time, you flatline. But even flatlined cortisol does not meet the determination for insufficiency. This is the problem that I have with the medical community. To gauge everybody's natural volume of cortisol, they use a population standard, which is 2 standard deviations away from the mean. Now, I don't want to get too statistical on you, but long story short, you can't take every individual in this population, especially people in the fitness community, bulk them into a population study and say 2 standard deviations away from the mean, this much volume dictates whether you're in range or not. So the way studies, the criteria of how studies are set up, I don't like. It already assumes that you must have 0 cortisol to be insufficient. So adrenal fatigue exists, it's an imbalanced rhythm, And there are many sufferers out there, and we'll talk in video 2 about how to fix